Thank you for agreeing to participate in this most important discussion on the threats and challenges faced by the Caribbean immigrant community in the United States and to Puerto Ricans who are citizens of the United States and not immigrants, but who we regard as part of our Caribbean family. Immigrants of color are facing many challenges, and our very existence here in the United States are in jeopardy. The threats to immigrants are amplified and reflected in the egregious attacks, scurrilous statements, and lies leveled against immigrants of color, and the dehumanization of immigrants of color central to the presidential campaign by former President Donald Trump, his running mate J.D. Vance, and his Republican and MAGA supporters. We are deeply disturbed and justifiably angered by specific scurrilous rhetoric targeting the Haitian and Puerto Rican communities. We are all threatened by the moral repugnant policy framework detailed in the Project 2025, a 922-page document which lays out a detailed blueprint for a future Trump administration and the Republican Party should Trump win the presidential election. As immigrants and people of color, we find it morally repugnant and deeply racist when former President Donald Trump say, "We are immigrant garbage. We are poisoning the blood of Americans, and we are enemies within." Trump's statements are compounded by Republican leaders who are comfortable with these egregious statements and even excuse them. Each of us on this panel participating in this forum is connected to the Caribbean. We are a part of the Caribbean family. We have 6 panelists broadly representative of the Caribbean. Let me briefly introduce them. I begin with Mrs. Samantha Howard, who, as a Puerto Rican, directly felt the sting of the attack on her country and people. She is a distinguished community leader, has devoted over 19 years to advancing equity, inclusion, and opportunity throughout the state of Maryland. As a passionate advocate for the Latino Caribbean, representing her heritage of Puerto Rico and other underrepresented communities in Prince George's County, she has led efforts to expand access to vital resources, cultivate strategic alliances, and uplift the voices of marginalized populations. Renowned for her unwavering dedication and visionary approach, Samantha exemplifies a legacy of transformative leadership and community empowerment. Dr. Donna Christensen. Former Delegate Dr. Donna Christensen represented the U.S. Virgin Islands in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1997 to 2015. Dr. Christensen is also a medical doctor and served as medical director for St. Croix Hospital, USVI, and as Acting Commissioner of Health for the Virgin Islands. Dr. Christensen also serves in leadership of the Caribbean American Political Action Committee, which issued a scathing condemnation of former President Donald Trump's scurrilous statement about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. Attorney Gabriel Christian is an attorney, a Maryland trial attorney, author of several books on Caribbean history, and a former judicial commissioner of the Maryland Court of Appeals. Known for his leadership and civic activities, Attorney Christian's advocacy on Caribbean and African diaspora issues were honed during his college years, serving as chairman of the DC United Student Coalition Against Racism and Apartheid and president of the Caribbean Students Association of the District of Columbia. During his studies at the Georgetown University Law Center, Mr. Christian served as a student bar representative on the Georgetown University Divestment Committee to bring pressure to bear on South Africa to end the apartheid regime. Mr. Irwine Clare Sr., OD, is Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, which he founded in 1996. Dedicated to the empowerment of the Caribbean diaspora in the USA, Irwine Clare has served on the boards of several diaspora organizations and is acclaimed for his work providing assistance to Caribbean athletes and high school athletics programs in Jamaica. Mr. Clare is one of the few automatic go-to persons for his views on issues affecting the Jamaican and Caribbean immigrant community. Dr. Alix Desulme. Dr. Desulme, a Haitian-American, has been a lifelong educator and has been a leader in his community dedicated to public service. He has been serving as mayor of North Miami since December 13, 2022. Prior to his service as mayor, Dr. Desulme made history when he became North Miami's first Black city clerk in 2009 and the youngest Haitian American to serve in a similar position in the United States. In 2015, he was elected to the North Miami City Council, and in 2016, he became vice mayor. He also serves as adjunct professor at St. Thomas University. Mr. Louis McSween is the co-founder and president of CariBeat LLC, America's leading Caribbean lifestyle company, a former executive of one of the largest commercial airlines in North America, and general manager of Trinidad and Tobago's International Airport. Mr. McSween works diligently to elevate all things Caribbean throughout the United States. He serves as a commissioner on Governor Moore's Commission on Caribbean Affairs and serves on the Multicultural Commission of the State's Attorney of Prince George's County. I begin with Mrs. Samantha Howard, who, as a Puerto Rican, directly felt the sting of the attack on her country and people. Mrs. Howard, briefly explain to us how you felt personally when you first heard the words spoken at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally that Puerto Rico was an island of garbage floating in the ocean and the people of Puerto Rico as garbage. also share with us the impact on Puerto Ricans generally.
First, thank you for this opportunity and for bringing together all of these beautiful panelists. And I want to start by saying that I feel what we would call acogida. I feel love. I feel love from my fellow Caribbean members, and that helps a lot during a time like this. I was busy living my life, working. I wasn't aware of what was happening until all of a sudden my phone started to go crazy. Everyone from family members, friends, colleagues were sending me what was happening. And it was some were the same clips, some were different clips. And taking the time to look through them, I was first overwhelmed. And second, I was in disbelief that like the audacity and like just the disrespect. And it was very hard to remain calm and remain quiet, which is for someone like myself who I often in my work give voice to the voiceless. It really became the time for my voice and for how I felt, and I found it honestly a little bit more difficult to process, because when I heard the words "a floating island of garbage," I was like, how can you possibly describe La Isla del Encanto, one of the most beautiful places in the world, as garbage? So when I further processed that, I was like, oh, he must be referring to the people, which I was I'm sweating. I'm so offended. And I knew at that moment, just with everyone else, that I knew Puerto Rican people would rise from this, and we would say, you know what, this not okay, and it's never okay. But it has been and still continues to be an overwhelm of emotions. It has felt dehumanizing. It has felt very personal, like a very personal attack. And then having to work with my family and colleagues and coworkers to process their emotions. And it's been everything from outrage to sadness to fear, um, to even people feeling depression. And these are the things that happen in political environments when communities are attacked. And I've talked a lot about it in other spaces about what people experience, something called political PTSD, right? Where they, every 4 years or in political environments, people become afraid of being targeted. And then when they are targeted, how do you help a community process that? So it's been emotionally heavy, but it's also been a spark to unite and to educate not only ourselves, but those around us about our history, about who we are, and to dive deeper into our pride and and our cultural heritage and our contributions, and to not ever forget that and never let anyone else forget that either. And sitting with my children and explaining them to things about not just what's going on because they're very little, but just to know thyself, to know who they are and know what stock they come from, and never allow anyone to speak like that about who we are. So I know that was a little bit all over the place, but that's exactly how I feel. It's an
Right.
overwhelming environment to be in. But again, I come back to feeling extremely supported by our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And to me, that's very beautiful. And I'm super grateful for that support, which is just a testament to Caribbean people in general, how we can come together and how we can uplift each other.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I just wanted to know that everyone on this panel shares your pain shares your anger, and we stand firmly with you as part of our Caribbean family. I turn to Dr. Desulme and ask that he address the same question in terms of the lies specifically about Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. We want to hear your personal reaction and the impact on the Haitian community generally.
First and foremost, Ambassador Ward, honorable guests and panelists, I want to say thank you for the invitation, and it's indeed an honor for me to be here with such an esteemed panel. I think similar to Samantha, emotion is just a disbelief, but with us being Haitian American, it's like we are punching bags. And I know, Honorable Ward, you and I, we have been on this same call about Haiti on various different things when it comes to dealing with the Caribbean. Not only we can't catch a break back home, we're dealing with stuff back there, but when you have folks trying to leave their country to come here for just for a better life, because if their life was better at home, trust me, the majority of those who trying to make it here would not make that voyage. But the sad part about this this racist, this xenophobic, and everything that you could possibly think of, the campaign that the former president and JD Vance are running are just about dehumanizing, and I think Samantha was right, on Black people. That's just what it is. And the fact that the vice president happened to be of Caribbean descent, so they just finding any ways of trying to make any connection. So we learned this week that the attack on the Haitian migrant, this was something that was fabricated from Russia. That started that they knew before they put out the attack that it was false, which was reported a week later. And they insisted that the attack, so they clearly knew what were they doing and the strategy there. And the strategy there was just to show folks that, hey, these are people who are different than us, who are other than us. And not only he already done a great job, they don't look like us. I mean, it's just the racism is on full steroid, and we get it. And I think his base does get it, but the anger that we felt as a community when we heard it, we rised up as a community. We may be small, but we're very mighty, and we started to mobilize folks. It was around 2 weeks before the time frame to end the registration, October 7th deadline. So Haitian American from across the country was mobilizing in different chat groups and different things to encourage folks from voting. But we do know they do have an issue with Haitian American, because no matter what, as Trump has claimed when he was running in 2016, came down to Little Haiti and make the claim, vast majority, 95% of Haitian Americans are Democrats. And he did not get that. He only got 5% of the vote in 2016, as much efforts that he made. And from what we're hearing, they know that these folks, the 200,000 that came here legally through this path, so their whole misinformation is a whole part of this content with the Democratic Party, because they feel like if these folks are on the path to citizenship, if they do eventually become citizen, it does not work well for them. So that's all part of a bigger strategy in terms of making us look bad and different in terms of dehumanizing us. But we are ready. We are mobilizing. We're not getting we're not getting this thing by whatever rhetoric that we have identified the top states where Haitians American are. Georgia is on the battleground, and we have over 300 folks knocking on doors right now, making sure that folks are turning out. Just like we are joining forces with the Puerto Rican community in Florida, making sure that trash day is Tuesday. November 5th. And we are doing what we can to make sure that everyone does get that the call to action, to act and to know that we are a people. And regardless, we are going to win, but regardless what the outcome going to be on Tuesday, we need to make our voices collectively known as a Caribbean community, to know that we stand, and we do not stand for hate. We stand for moving forward, and we're gonna move forward with the Vice President and Tim Walz on Tuesday.
Thank you very much for those words and sharing your perspective. Dr. Christensen, as a Caribbean person and former legislator, please share with us your perspectives and reactions on these two issues.
Thank you, and it's really an honor to be on this panel with you. Thank you for inviting me, and with all the other panelists. Where to begin? First of all, I guess I would say that it reflects Donald Trump and his followers' sentiment about all Black people and brown people, and their ignorance about the relationship that the Caribbean people have had to the United States going back centuries, and the fact that Puerto Ricans and Virgin Islanders are American citizens. Haiti has been a particular interest to me as a congressperson and as a Caribbean person, period. And the Caribbean itself has also faced a lot of negative things all the way through. When I came to Congress in 1977, we were in the Banana Wars, taking away the economic abilities of the Caribbean countries by bringing in the American companies' bananas. In Haiti, they brought in rice. We fought back on that as well, because rice crop was again the economic support for the people of Haiti. I remember working with one of our retired ambassadors, Ambassador Todman, when the United States was holding up money for Haiti that could have really been helpful. And I believe if we had done more of that kind of support, we would probably not be where Haiti is today. In Puerto Rico, I remember after Maria, we were both victims of Maria and Irma. Puerto Rico, probably more of Maria. And there was a withholding of funds for Puerto Rico until the president decided to go and throw the paper towels. There's a big amount of disrespect for our countries, a lack of understanding, but disrespect as well. And this is reflective of that. And although the attack is against Puerto Rican and Haitians, it's really against all of us of Caribbean descent. And I'm glad to hear Samantha say that she feels the support that she has received from her Caribbean brothers and sisters, because when I heard it, I put it on X, I put it on Facebook, I put it everywhere I could so that everybody could see the outrageous statements. And as you said, we at the Caribbean American PAC put out a scathing press release on the Haitian issue in Springfield, Ohio. And Ambassador, you are a part of helping us put that together. But we Caribbean people need to just continue to stick together. And I would go further even to say that if I was walking through any state in the United States, and I break into my Cujan dialect, I might be picked up and sent somewhere. It's an affront to all of us. So not only the Caribbean brothers and sisters of African and Hispanic descent, but we all need to stick together.
That last point that you made about being picked up, any one of us who speak with an accent, or especially if we are of color, non-white, then we are victims, directly or indirectly, of this persecution.
And particularly upset about the impact on our children too.
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
no problem. Mr. Clare, you have a very long history of working with immigrant communities, particularly with Caribbean immigrants while living and working in New York, with large populations of Haitians, Puerto Ricans, who are not immigrants, and millions of Caribbean and other immigrants of color. First, what was your personal reaction to each of these issues? And were you surprised by these scurrilous attacks about Haitians and Puerto Ricans, particularly, but the entire immigrant of color communities? And secondly, how are the immigrant communities in New York responding to these lies and egregiousness which have become the hallmark of Trump's campaign for the presidency, and which are setting the stage for Trump's future immigration policies should he be returned to the White House? I hope you wrote that down.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this distinguished panel, speaking at a very opportune time. The sad part is that we're speaking in response as opposed to positioning ourselves to move ourselves forward. And by doing so, setting the stage that some of these things that has happened probably would not have happened. You see, I think that many of these challenges are happening because we're being picked off one by one. And I'm taken aback by the statement by Madam Christensen as it relates to sticking together. Let's call a spade here now, guys. We're talking family business. We have not worked efficiently together. And by that I mean, as such, it has allowed for the opportunity for some of these things taking place. And you see, it is part of the bigger strategy, because they also know that they can't come at the whole group all at once. So they'll pick off bit by bit. And because we do not have the sufficiency in collateral preparedness, they have been successful to the fact where it gathered it was fodder for the mobs, I would say. But what it has also done is that it has awakened us to that reality, and hence conversations like these. And we must use it as a teaching moment so that we stop repeating and allowing these opportunities. All right. My brother Mayor there in North Miami, one of the things I find, especially in our Haitian community and the rest of the Caribbean, for geopolitical reasons, it's the Caribbean. But sometimes when there are certain issues, it becomes a Haitian issue within the Caribbean. It's almost like an oxymoron. All right? But it's a strategy. And we have allowed ourselves to follow that rat down the hole. We have to move away from that. If it's Haitian business, it's Caribbean business. And our Haitian brothers and sisters must recognize that too and be more inclusive. Be more inclusive. It's not just when in need it becomes a Caribbean issue. But when we are going through times when we can allow ourselves to be pragmatic in our preparation, we must be inclusive. It's like saying, you know, we're fighting for the goal and the goal is here, but when the goal comes up, we just lock shop. Can't do that. Can't do that. To answer the last part of your question about what's happening in New York, I think there's a great pushback, but not the kind of collective pushback that we should have because we would have been organized. We're not as organized as we should. But we can see pockets taking place because you see that one issue last now with the situation around Puerto Rico, that has, you know, I mean, I've been to Puerto Rico 4 times, so I'm a Puerto Rican too. But the point here is this, is that it should not be taking these type of situations to recognize that we technically are one. This whole immigration situation here impacts all of us, whether we're legal, I'm talking about persons who have come to this country, whether we are legal here or undocumented. But here goes the other situation, Ambassador and team, as it relates to here in New York. The migrant crisis has broken up the family, inter and intra. The folks who would have collectively been a part of the team as it relates to immigration positivities are now fractious because of the migrant situation. There's some pulling and pushing. And I use this as an example. When you can see the mayor, the Democratic mayor of New York, who could almost in some of his arguments sound anti-immigrant, it tells you, you know, so as a result of that, there's some fraction there. But I think though, the venom that came out of Madison Square last Sunday is reminiscent of what, going back to what, 1938, 39? Yeah, and many of us now read it. We can only read about it, but we now seeing and understanding what this is all about. Because I live in a city where I'm in Jamaica. I never left Jamaica, so I'm in Jamaica, Queens. So, but if I step out of Jamaica, 15 minutes out of Jamaica, I'm in a different world, you know, as to how you could be treated. They don't know that I'm a citizen over there. You know, and if a person tells you that he's going to do something over and over again, I think we better start believing it, you know, and start preparing for it. You know, so yes, the whole situation of the Haitian brothers up there in Ohio and now with the whole situation in Puerto Rico, these are telltale signs. But we should not have been waiting for these telltale signs for us to get up off our posteriors and be prepared or moving forward in a progressive way, because it is usually when you move forward in a very progressive way that there's a lesser tendency for people to come trying to pick you off. You know, it's just like me saying, come Labor Day, the largest presentation of Caribbean power, potential power, is on the Parkway in Brooklyn. But I did say potential. We set the stage for everybody else to participate and use it for whatever they want. But we have not collectively said to folks that this potential energy is really kinetic energy. It can turn on light bulbs. It can create opportunities. So these are the things that continues to won't say no, get away from us, allowing for these type of situations. But I remain hopeful, because if it's one thing you know about Jamaican and Caribbean people, if you touch me, con. You touch me, con. But me, I go respond certain kind of way. And the response here is going out to vote. And to vote for Kamala Harris, I should say, my Brownstown St. Anne person from the great parish of St. Anne, not St. Elizabeth, Ambassador, where her father is from, to vote for the Harris Walls team. To go, and I'm not telling people to go out and vote. I'm telling them to go out and vote for Harris Walls and all the way down Democratic. Period.
That was well said. Mr. Christian, You have many years' experience working across Caribbean and African diaspora communities. What is your response to Trump's vilification of members of our African family, Haitians and Puerto Ricans particularly, but also immigrants of color?
Blessed good afternoon to you, Ambassador Ward, and to our distinguished panel. Memory takes me back to 40 plus years ago when I came to school in DC. On the facade of the archives is the inscription, inscribed in marble, past is prologue. Past is prologue. And so it's very important for us to see this in the context of what might be not only for our lives, but in history records this as a tipping point as to whether the American Republic, founded on the principle, though not made manifest, but at least idealistically, that all men, didn't use women in those years, in that time, but all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with those inalienable rights that include, of course, the right to liberty and all the rest of it. We know the rest of it. The first essay I wrote at 9 years old was on Toussaint Louverture of the Haitian Revolution. Good to see you, Mayor. And Brother Irwine Clare is very correct. Oftentimes, we gather when there is crisis. It hurts me that a young prosecutor who met me prosecuting the defense, Alice Brooks, has a fine Puerto Rican sister as liaison, and my dearest clients, including the first Hispanic chief of police of a major metropolitan area department, Chief Roberto Hilton, who was of Jamaican, Panamanian heritage. And I had not met Ms. Howard. So thank you, Ambassador Ward, for bringing Ms. Howard to us. But I want to go do a few things. And, I want to sort of, almost channel our sister Donna Christensen's comment as well. That if she uses a Crucian accent, she might be hauled off because they may not know that Crucians, that is a word, folks, people from St. Croix. For those of you who are not aware, they're called Crucians. Those from St. Thomas are called St. Thomians. And of course, those from Puerto Rico, we just say PR. And Puerto Rico got hit the night after Dominican got hit by Maria. And Puerto Rico is very dear to me because we go home through Puerto Rico, through San Juan. So Puerto Rico is home as well. What are the elements of authoritarianism that is now poised, if it's allowed to succeed, poised to overthrow the American Republic and the Constitution as we know it? Let's look at rhetorical garnishment and language. The use of derogatory language to describe immigrants and their home countries, such as the infamous shithole countries remark. Of course, we know what happened at Madison Square Garden. So Madison Square Garden was not the first. It was part of a systematic seasoning of the mind in the most negative way to make dehumanization normative. Let me repeat, to make the dehumanization of folks of color and those who are immigrants normative in the American political discourse, okay? So that remark at Madison Square Garden on our sister island of Puerto Rico, and before that on our Haitian brothers and sisters, and before that on the so-called countries, whole countries, highlights a tendency towards the dehumanization and alienation of immigrant groups, particularly those from African-American background, African Caribbean background, and Latin American nations. They don't use that against Melania Trump. She can hardly speak. Well, I don't want to be derogatory myself, but you can, of course, understand that when she speaks, those of us who are native English speakers have a difficulty understanding, but you'll never hear that said about Slovenia or Hungary. So it is a racist, let's be very clear, for those who are still confused, and there are many Latin Americans, Cubans in particular. I'm not afraid now to point out our brothers and Haitians and Jamaicans who support Donald Trump. They support the destruction, because this is what it is. First, you begin with the dehumanization, as they did with the Jews. in the 1930s, Kristallnacht, and then you have the pogroms, the killings, and it has already begun. Then you have the nationalism and identity politics. There has been an increase in the nationalist rhetoric that emphasizes a traditional or narrow view of American identity. You heard the gentleman at the garden. Irwine Clare may not have gone because he's too dignified a person to allow for himself to be in that motley crowd. But the gentleman, well, strike that. The person said, he's not a gentleman, America is for Americans. I'm an African born in the Americas. We didn't immigrate here. We came from the British West Indies that prospered the United States when sugar was king. That's why the endowment of Yale, the endowment of William and Mary, the endowment of Harvard University came primarily from rich British West Indian sugar planters. The triangular trade between Africa, England, and the 13 colonies is what led for a Treasury Secretary by the name of Alexander Hamilton, because of his knowledge of that commerce, to become the first Secretary of the United States Treasury. Immigrants, today dehumanized when they forget the role of the Haitians in the battle of the American Revolution that made these United States. They don't teach that history. So nationalism has been that stick used to bit the immigrant community. Then we have misinformation and stereotypes, spreading untrue statements about immigrants, such as the claim that Haitians eat cats and dogs, serves only to further dehumanize and spread lies and spread fears. These falsehoods can create misconceptions and prejudices among the public, leading to further marginalization of our immigrant community. You see, first of all, you have to call them vermin. Listen to the term now. What do you do with vermin? When you have vermin in your house, who do you call? Do you call the medical doctor, Donna Christensen? No, you don't.
Terminator.
You call the exterminator to exterminate the vermin. Listen carefully, my friends. Then policy measures. The rise of restrictive immigration policies, such as travel bans targeting predominantly Muslim countries or increased deportations directed at Latin Americans, is often justified through authoritarian narratives about security, economic competition, and purity. Somewhere I read that this person who seeks to be the leader of this country is saying that they are contaminating our blood. Who's they? Who is the they that's contaminating our blood when we have a system that is built on the rape of women of African descent that has today created a society of multicultural, multi-ethnic, a rainbow? May have been in its genesis based on rape, but today we accept that that is what we are. We are a nation of mixed heritage, where each and every strand of that heritage has a rightful place. Media and political discourse. So today, certain media outlets and political figures amplify anti-immigrant sentiment using sensationalist and fear-mongering tactics. This contributes to normalizing extreme positions and policies that might otherwise be seen as fringe. So what today is considered as normative, just a few years ago, Ambassador Ward, would have been considered totally unacceptable. So the unacceptable today in America is acceptable. Historical context. The rise of authoritarianism is based on lies. It's based on a plethora of lies which deny the ordinary American an understanding of the role of immigrants from the Caribbean, from Africa, and other places. even those who are actually not immigrants, like people from St. Thomas and Croix and Puerto Rico, who are actually U.S. citizens.
Gabe,
Yes,
you will
so I
you
will
will have
stop
an
there,
opportunity to
and I just
expand
want to say
further.
to you that we want to sort of outline those, and I thank you for the opportunity to give some of that outline.
Yeah, you'll have an opportunity to expand further on some of those points that you raised. Mr. McSween, you had the benefit of hearing the other 5 panelists. So you are actually at an advantage. So we know you're well connected to the cultural norms of the Caribbean community and the whole Caribbean culture has enriched the overall culture of the United States. In your view, how has Trump's and his supporters' anti-immigrant diatribe impact or could potentially impact the future acceptance and adaptation of Caribbean culture in American society?
That's a great question. But first and foremost, as everyone has said, then thank you so much for the opportunity, Ambassador Ward. And I think it's a true honor to be part of this esteemed, really, panel. If I may just sort of try and stay within the 3 minutes that you've mentioned, but I think Brother Clare and everyone has really made some excellent points, and Brother Christian, the very last here. But I'm just going to go back a little bit and reflect upon my upbringing. I was born in Venezuela, so I've had some experience, obviously, with the Latin Trinidad mother and Canadian father. I've lived in Puerto Rico for almost 3 years, and I've lived in one of my capacities for the airlines. I was in charge of Latin America and the Caribbean. So that afforded me an opportunity to visit pretty much all of the islands, many of the Latin American countries. But when I first heard the statements that were recently made, also, it took me back to my own upbringing. So obviously I was very upset. But we as a family of seven siblings, we can talk about each other. But once someone from the outside talks about one of us, that's a problem. So what I found until this is that, and I may differ a little bit in terms of my point, is that we in the region, we operate pretty much in isolation. And I think Brother Clare somewhat referred to that. Jamaica is Jamaica, Trinidad is Trinidad, St. Vincent is St. Vincent, Barbados is Barbados. And we fight within each other. And sometimes, if the fight stays, as I was talking about my own family, if it stays within the family, that's one thing, but we take it to the outside. So my role, especially with my company, once I retired from the aviation career, was really to start bridging this gap. For many, many years, that's what we do. And we use culture and cuisine to bridge the gap. We don't speak about Jamaica. We don't speak about Trinidad. We speak about the Caribbean. You'll never hear us blaspheme one or the other. But I think so until we, within the region, start to become more proactive as opposed to reactive. This, as unwelcome as the statements have been, there's one positive that comes out of it, and that is that it lends us or gives us an opportunity to galvanize, if you will, to mobilize and organize the region, not necessarily, one island over the other. Because the fact that I'm out here, I hear the comments all the time, who's better, who isn't better, and it goes outside of just the group itself. And if I'm talking about my own family, that's one thing, but it's outside that's bringing it in. Even in Puerto Rico, for example, there would have been differences. So I think it can impact, but if we use this opportunity to put systems in place, try to break down these silos, if you will, and have some more horizontal sort of communication and interaction with each other instead of just up and down. I think we would have made tremendous strides, because I think we've given this country an opportunity to really cherry pick it however they want, because they know that we're not together. We're not united. You know, Bob Marley's great song, One Love. It's a beautiful song, beautiful message. Nevertheless, I don't think we practice the one love. And if we begin to practice that one love, this conversation today would not have been just specific to Haiti, which is, we need to address it. It would not have been specific to Puerto Rico, because we do need to address it, but it would be more so about the region. And that's where really our strengths lie. After Tuesday, I would hope that the intent here is to pick up this momentum, and not just about the comments, but about how we can move this forward and be much more united, so that whenever someone, for example, I think Samantha Howard mentioned it earlier at the outset, when we need to be that megaphone for those voices. And the megaphone is really for, the region. Yes, we address the specific comments, but we truly do need to, to begin to mobilize and find some way to really organize the community. I spoke to the Haitian ambassador when it first came out, comments first came out. I've invited some of my Haitian brothers and sisters to join. One of the first phone calls I made was to Samantha, knowing that she's a sister from Puerto Rico, and many other of my Puerto Rican friends. That was the first phone call that I made to find out, one, how are you doing? These things were so offensive. So it can have an impact, but come Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on how this goes, all people remember about us is the sand and beach and the great rum punches and the great, times that they have. But we need to change that narrative and be much more collective and really with more purpose, as opposed to just reacting to just some of these nonsense things that are going on.
I do hope that we can continue this conversation.
Yeah.
And to really bring into focus what several of our panelists have been saying.
Right.
Dr. Desulme, after having heard all of your colleagues on this panel, leave us with your final comment, taking into consideration the need that have been expressed by Irwine Clare, Louis McSween, about being proactive, working together as a Caribbean community. Going forward, how we can best defend ourselves from being picked off one group at a time.
Amen.
Dr. Desulme.
First and foremost, Honorable Ward, I want to say thank you to you from the bottom of my heart, and for the great work you've been doing. And you've always been a leader, leading us, trying to connect members from the Caribbean. I think this is a conversation that does begin now, but certainly continue after Tuesday. And I think what I'm hearing from everyone on the panel is the messaging that we've been talking about the past 2 years. And so how we as Caribbean need to put ourselves together to form a better communication strategy, to talk about how we could get this synergy together, because one attack on us is an attack on all of us. And I must say, when this thing had happened, and I know we had convened a meeting as such, Ambassador Ward, they were sending the folks back in Del Rio 2 years ago, the influx of the Haitian migrant that was in Haiti. just to show you what was happening, there were some, not a lot, 90% of those folks were from Haiti, was immigrants from Haiti, but there were a couple from Jamaica and other places. Well, guess what? They took everybody and sent them back to Haiti. They didn't ask like where they were, the fact that they were Black, and it was after. In fact, there was a young man, I believe, that was born in the U.S. and somewhere in New York, and I think Representative Baldwin. It was a big thing, and I don't know how he ended up was in that group anyhow. But he was end up sending back to Haiti also, just because he was Black. So you guys are right on the point. I think it's us on the East Coast that's kind of know about the different ethnic group of where we come from in the Caribbean. But once you start hitting the middle part of this country and the Western, they'll take, oh, you Black. Some of them don't even know part of our Caribbean if that even exists. So they know us as a Black nation. Once you touch all of us, one of us, it should be all of us.
What do we need to do? We know we need to send a very strong message. But what do we need to do going forward? We know we want everyone to vote on Tuesday. We want them to vote not just for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. We want them to vote Democratic all down the line, because it is extremely important that when Kamala Harris and Tim Walz enter the White House, that they have a Congress that supports them. Dr. Christensen, maybe you want to comment on that for us. The importance of having a Democratic Congress to support a Democratic White House.
Well, let's start with when Barack Obama was president. The head of the Senate said, we're going to make sure he's a one-term president. Even with Biden, they did the same thing, decided to block whatever he wanted, try to block whatever he wanted to do. I think the Biden-Harris campaign outsmarted them a couple of times. So we did get an infrastructure bill. We did get the CHIPS bill. We got the first, it's not a weapons ban, but the first gun legislation in 30 years. And so we were able to get some things done. But then look at when President Obama had a Supreme Court nominee. They wouldn't, not only did they decide they're not going to vote on him, they would not even entertain him in their office for a conversation. So we know that to send our sister to and the governor to White House, they will go with their hands tied if they have a Senate that is not Democratic controlled. And it's critical. We may have some Supreme Court nominees to put on the bench. We don't know what might happen, who might want to retire. We know that if Trump comes in, he's going to try to get some retirees on his side so that he can have younger people who he knows will stay on the Supreme Court longer because it's for life. So, it's critical. And the House the same way. They will, first of all, we want to see Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House.
Yes,
and so we want to have a Democratic House as well. The country needs it. We need to have a combined effort to fight back the negative forces that we're fighting in this country and against countries where people look like those of us on this screen. So it's critical. It's critical.
yes.
Even the state legislatures and governors, you want to make sure that when things happen, when the Congress passes money and sends it to the states, that it is shared equally, fairly, in equity across their states and not just to their special pet projects. So
Well said.
it's important.
Well said, well said. Samantha, you sat there, you were the first to speak. You laid the stage for us, and I think we have grabbed the baton. But having heard your colleagues today, what does that say to you as a Puerto Rican?
This was really beautiful in a lot of ways to hear so many different perspectives all coming from one region, our Caribbean, to hear about policy, to hear about history, to hear about being reactive and being proactive, to hear from those who have been in this space for a very, very long time. And for those of us who are new in spaces like this. And something that Dr. Christensen said earlier really stood out to me in terms of like, what do we do next, right? And it is to focus on our youth. And our youth need to know their history. Our youth need to know all of the information that Mr. Gabriel Christian was saying. You know, I was fascinated by everything I was hearing, and I think that we don't do that enough. We sometimes lean on our educational systems to teach and forget that we also need to teach at home, that we need to teach our history, particularly for our first generation born here, youth. And how do we bring more people into these spaces? For me, this is very new. While I've worked in advocacy for a very long time, politics is very new to me, but it is fascinating. And how do we use these moments, which I greatly agree with Mr. Clare that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? You really, there really are opportunities for us to be united before so that people don't feel like they can say certain things to you. But also the fact that, Ambassador Ward, that you've created opportunities like this for us to use our voice is very important, because in Puerto Rico, they say el que calla otorga, and you must speak up. You must use your voice, and teaching our children the language of advocacy, the language of speaking up for themselves and creating boundaries, I think is really, really important. And the best way to lead is by example, making sure that you're going out and that you're using your voice at the polls, in spaces like this, also after elections as well, and making sure that it's a year-round effort of education, advocacy, and building pride culturally as well. So for me, it has been an absolute honor to be in this space. And after a week of just negative messaging, difficulties managing not only my own emotions, but the emotions of my community, this has been a very healing space. And while we're talking about policy and we're talking about politics and we're talking about advocacy, we also are talking about heart and about humans and about how this makes us feel. So thank you to my Caribbean brothers and sisters for this space. And I hope to be a part of future conversations as we continue to advocate and as we continue to uplift our region.
From what I have been seeing and hearing today, it seems that we need a Caribbean Academy. And with the opportunities that modern information technology provides us, that can be developed. And I'm not talking here about tertiary level academy. I'm talking about an academy to target the generation of children of Caribbean diaspora. akin to what Samantha was just saying about we need to teach our children. How do we do this? And this is something that should be looked at.
I agree. And, you know, there's so many ways I'm sure we can approach this. And, you know, with a group such as this, you know, there's a lot of intellectual capacity here so that coming up with some ideas really wouldn't be a problem. But I'd like to go back to some of the fundamentals. And, you know, we in the region, one may characterize it as maybe to some extent self-hate. You know, we have this tendency to, and I just want to go back to what's on the streets, you know, because sometimes, you know, we have to be mindful that what's happening on the ground is really different from what's happening, you know, at the high levels that we most times get together on. And when we continually bash each other, which we do, you know, there's this tendency that sometimes we overlook, and it takes something like this to drive the conversation. And the reason a lot of other islands really never even came forward, people really didn't speak up. They may have been really affected by the statements, no question. But in essence, they're not even thinking positively about, and in some cases, they may even agree because the needle hasn't really moved a whole lot in terms of the percentage of people dropping out. As a matter of fact, there's a few percentage points, supposedly, which can make a difference. But I really think we need to determine how we can get the senior folks, and you know, before we actually start addressing the youth, or it can be done just parallel to each other, sort of a standalone. Because I hear it all the time. And then we have the differences in terms of our immigrants who are light complected versus the ones that are dark complected. You know, where the access to learning English is different. You know, the Haitians, for example, go through, and I've met with several, in their opinion, really weren't aware of that, the funds are accessible to them, that getting English taught to them was very, very challenging. The access wasn't there. Whereas for Latinos, it was a whole lot different. This is how people perceive things. They say, so we have some work to do, because it's not true. There is access, right? But how we make ourselves available to these groups so that we can then guide them, help them navigate, is another. So I do believe there are possibilities, and some great possibilities, but we just have to start breaking down these walls that we've created for each of our own islands. And, you know, if you reflect upon our growing up, you know, there was always the big island and the small island kind of thing. You know, when I was growing up, if you lived in Venezuela or even Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, wherever, you know, and it's a terms of endearment. It's negro, negrita, blanca, blanco, you know, and so there's a lot of deep-rooted things here that we need to be mindful of, you know, and I'm not suggesting that we can't do it, but I think before we start making just sort of a blanket statement, we need to be able to galvanize, you know, and find a way to mobilize, if you will, the folks on the ground into thinking that we are one. This is all about one love and unity. That's the key. And then we can get into all of the other things. But we have to start changing that mindset that Puerto Rico is our brother. The Puerto Ricans are our sisters. Dominicans are not just a big island, Jamaica, Trinidad, and so forth. You know, we're all one here. You know, we even fight up on little things. Let me digress or trivialize it. So rice and peas and rice, or whoever is better, whose roti is better. You know, hey, roti is roti. And my brother Claire's laughing. If a white person comes to me today and they want to know about roti, they went to Jamaica and it was the best roti they ever had. I said, listen, it's fantastic, and you need to go back to Jamaica and you need to go try this other country and try this other country. I don't blast it. I promote it, right? I could sit there and say, well, I'm a Trinidadian and no one makes roti better than Trinidadians,
Thank you.
right?
Thank you.
Or better. So we there's some fundamental things that I think we can do a deep dive into, come up with a plan, and I really believe that we can be very successful as long as come Tuesday, we don't just put it to bed, but we have to pick it up.
We'll have a post-election conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to have to bring this discussion to a close shortly. So, Irwine, would you like to give a closing argument?
Sure. Thank you, sir. And in fact, you know, I'm in my old age. I'm very cognizant of the bridges that I have built before or been involved in building before. And I also don't subscribe to continuously recreating the wheel. I always look to see what it is that we have, learn from what we have, and how can we improve on it. And just to use an example of something, I think you and I, Ambassador, would have had conversations on a Jamaican scale on this. But when I look at the Caribbean today, I look at some things that I think works. Do you know that all Caribbean islands compete, but yet still they fall under Caribbean tourism when they go out there to the marketplace? You know, it's a rather interesting scenario. It's almost like the collective of Alibaba and his cohorts. I won't say anything else. You know, we meet in a group and understand what the marketplace is all about. Then we go out and do what we have to do. That works. We should learn something from that whole collectivity of Caribbean tourism, because we've seen the proceeds and we've seen what it has done for the region. The other thing I look at too is that the University of the West Indies works.
Yes.
Collective. You know, from the perspective of the academic onslaught on the world. It's a prestigious institution that brings Caribbean nations together from that perspective. And last but not least, because I was thinking about some things there from the Caribbean perspective. Believe it or not, West Indies cricket working them. We're just not winning. It works. You know, it works. You see the collective spirit here? You know, and then, you know, the new phenomenon now is that my friend from Dominica is all there boasting now that he has an Olympic champion. And I'm happy for him. We celebrate him. And I can say that my brothers and sisters from St. Lucia has an Olympic champion. I celebrate Dominic St. Lucia as well. Why? Because she came through Jamaica to get to that podium. We work together.
And don't forget Trinidad, Mr. Brother Claire.
And then we go to Trinidad, the same situation. And I use Atterbury for this example. But the point here that I'm making is this.
He trained Brianna Williams, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, he does. But what I'm saying here is this, is that I think we have some opportunity, we have some nuggets amongst us that we probably may need to look at and see if we can retrofit. Because I tell you this, investments to install and put in new stuff in these environments can be challenging. Not to say we shouldn't, but if we can, you know, put some more weight on the wheels we have now,
Yes.
we can begin to achieve some of these ends. So I view this as a start for something that will bear fruit. And as Al Sharpton says, in order for us to benefit and enjoy the fruit, we must nurture the root. We need to do that now. So I say, let us all go out and tell our people to vote down, up, from top down, Democrat.
Amen. Amen to that.
You know, and thank you very much for the opportunity, and great group of folks here.
Great having you on board. Gabriel, you have 1 minute.
Well, I just give thanks and blessings. I endorse the idea of the academy. It all begins with education. We have Miss Howard with us. Miss Howard, we can talk about that. There's actually a format for that, because at the end of the day, the miseducation of the population, the dumbing down of the nation, can only be destructive of democracy. Democracy only thrives in an environment where people are learned and they understand constitutions, the importance of rule of law, the importance of abiding by the results of an election and not going up to the Congress and trying to break down the Congress because you feel you won, and yet every case you filed, even by judges who were appointed by you, ruled against your petitions, 52 in all. And so those things that we confront today in way of authoritarianism and the dehumanization of other human beings and the use of language in the way that I described must be attacked in a way that is meaningful, kind, understanding, and learned. That way we can build what I think Abe Lincoln liked to call, well, Dr. King called it the beloved community, and I think Abe Lincoln used another term, but he basically wanted us to live in a society where each of us had the respect that was worthy. So I want to thank everyone here, and Ambassador Wood in particular, and I want to also admit, or in fact disclose, that Brother Louis talks about Trinidad, but he was actually born in Venezuela. So he's actually a Venezuelan, but Venezuela too is part of the Caribbean family, Louis. And Louis, I want to thank you for bringing up the issue of Puerto Rico and Haiti so that we could, as a Caribbean Commission, address it. And Ambassador Ward, I believe next year is the year we all get together again for that immigrant summit that you mentioned to me prior to Madison Square Garden. You may close on that point. Thank you so much, all of you. It's been a high honor and privilege. God bless you. Maybe go forward on the 5th and win a victory for democracy.
Thank you. Donna, did you have a last word for us?
I'm going to just be very brief because I think I just second everything that was said. We have many opportunities that we probably have not taken full advantage of to be more proactive. And I would use also our Caribbean American PAC and offer our PAC as not only a partner, but ways that we can also be a part of the work going forward, being proactive, bringing our communities together.
I fully endorse that. I think each of us have, in some way, made our final comments, and I want to thank each of you for being on this program today and helping to move our community forward. You know, I listened to one of the themes of the Harris-Walz campaign, repeatedly saying, we are not going back. And we agree we are not going back. But it reminds me of what we said in Jamaica back in the 70s. Forward ever, backward never. Clear, Mr. Clear, I know you're quite familiar with that phrase. And I think we have to adopt that mantra. We are not going back, we are going forward. And to go forward, we go forward together. The Caribbean is not monolithic, it's not homogeneous, but we have so much in common, so much that can unify us. There is no reason for us to be divided. So, forward ever, backward never. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the program. And I think many great things will come out of this. Thank you.